Good evening. My name is David Dickinson. I'm the chair of ANC3F. Thank you to everyone that has come out tonight for this important local community government meeting. I am not only the chair of ANC3F, but I'm also a commissioner of the single member district ANC3F 01, which includes Sidwell and Hearst and UDC and areas like that. I'd like to have the other commissioners introduce themselves as well as part of our roll call.
Good evening, Berg, 3F03.
Perfect. You've arrived safely. So we are on agenda item 1 for those that are closely following. In addition to the roll call, we are going to approve our agenda for tonight, and I am confident that there might be a few amendments. So on our consent agenda is the Abra license regarding the Ignoble wine. And then on to our regular agenda, there will be commissioner updates and announcements, then committee reports from the ANC for the Parks and Trails Subcommittee and the Streets and Sidewalks Subcommittee, and grants. Then we will have a community forum. Those of you that would like to make announcements, bring issues forward, etc. Then we will probably have, depending on the timing, a presentation. Well, certainly we will have at some point tonight, but on the agenda it's item number 6, Hearst Park, from DPR and DGS. Associated with that is the next agenda item, which is a public space application for Hearst Park. And then keeping on the theme of public space, there'll be a brief discussion on the public space application regarding Tilden Street, and I can explain that at that point. And then there's also segueing into some grant applications. There's one from the Wilson High School Tiger Athletics, another grant application from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. I believe there will also be a grant application from the Rock Creek Conservancy that I would suggest we put in after the application from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. So those are 3 grant applications. And then moving on to a resolution regarding the community working group on school overcrowding, a report they produced about a month ago and we discussed last time. We may have a further discussion on that and then seek to pass a resolution. And then finally, the last sort of cleanup items are an approval of the January and possibly February 2019 minutes.
As far as I know, January was approved at the February meeting, and tonight we have to approve February.
Okay, and we don't have the January on our website, but I'm sure that'll happen soon. And then other business and adjournment. So I had made a suggestion that we put in the grant application for the Rock Creek Conservancy after the one from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. Are there any other suggested revisions, additions to the agenda? Hearing none. So I think we will, remind me, Madam Secretary, do we pass this resolution by a vote and then that ratifies the consent agenda as well? So I make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is 5-0. I was going to say 4-0, 5-0. Okay, terrific. So we are going to move to the commissioner updates and announcements. We will start with you.
I have nothing.
I have a little bit of an update on the Whittle School. I met with the representative, Carol McGiffords, for Whittle to talk a little bit about the status of the stop work order that I'm sure everybody has seen on the corner of Van Ness and Connecticut Avenue. They have submitted a permit to DCRA. It's in process now. They expect to get it on an expedited basis in about 2 to 3 weeks. So let's back out about a week since this has already gone into process. And I would probably say about 2 weeks that they expect to get an official DCRA permit. What that means, one of the concerns that I had about the fact that they had not gotten a DCRA permit was that that there was a possibility that the inspections that go along with any kind of building permit and any kind of building process in the district may not have happened according to district regulations. She assured me that they have been in contact with DCRA from the beginning, and because of the kind of misunderstanding between whether or not they needed to get an official DCR permit, that was why they didn't, on their advice from their counsel and their advisors, did not go through with the actual process. However, they have been following the entire construction process, so everything has been inspected according to code, and they've passed everything. Asbestos has been passed, their structural and heavy demolition permits or inspections have all passed. So they are fully compliant with all the regulations and requirements, and the building construction is safe. So that made me real happy to hear that, especially since I'm an architect, I was a little concerned about it. So she assured me that she would keep us up to date. I'm going to be point on this simply because I raised my hand, I think. And she'll let us know, you know, as we get further and further when the actual permit is due to be released. And then I urged her to go, you know, to kind of do a report and another presentation to the community about what will happen going forward, you know, in terms of both getting the permit and how that might have changed the schedule a little bit, and some of the other requests that they will have to make for, you know, moving forward as soon as they get the permit. So anyway, that's just a brief update. We're kind of waiting now, but at least some of the initial concerns that I think a lot of people in the community had when they saw the stop work sign has been allayed.
Excuse me, Commissioner Malone, did you have something? We'll circle back to you.
Yeah, so I forgot that I was supposed to give an update on the progress on the Upston Street traffic calming project. I've been hearing from Jody Smolik, who's been taking point on this, and she's been in touch with DDOT and is Emily Dolphy, and is totally delighted with all the progress and everything that's been going on. So they put in a measuring device for the stop sign count to see if the particular intersection warranted a stop sign, and apparently it passed that, and it does. And so I assume that that means that the three-way stop will be put in, and hopefully that will calm some things down. All of these are traffic calming measures short of putting in the speed bumps that the residents in that street really objected to. So they're following it through. They also have some speed cameras in there to remind people to slow down. I don't know if those are permanent or not, but everything is proceeding according to the way that the residents would like to see it proceed, which is really good news. They're delighted. So I'm happy to report all of that.
Do you know whether they'll have another community meeting with DDOT? Is that necessary, or
as far as I know, DDOT is doing everything that they need to, and they're in touch with them very, very closely. And so I don't know of it. I don't think that they're going to need another community meeting. I don't think that they're going to schedule nor need one.
Yeah, I'd like to see maybe them put out to their street listserv the fact that they're going to be putting in the stop sign if they're going to that.
Okay.
We can talk about that. Seems like a fair notice issue for them. Thanks.
No updates for some.
I'm going to skip over myself for a moment. Monica, do you have any updates? No, I'm sorry.
Just one, if we have any residents on Chesterfield Place, I got a notice from DDOT that they are doing the restoration of sidewalk, curb, gutter, and wheelchair ramps on Chesterfield Place from Chesapeake Street to the dead end, starting on or around the 13th. So it may already be underway, and there'd be temporary no parking signs displayed and the date and time of the construction work. Just an FYI if there's any residents from there and they're not aware of this. That's it.
Thanks. I have a couple of updates. Pardon me. So Carolyn had mentioned the status of the Whittle School and the building permit issue, I wanted to make sure the community also knew that, or knows that there has been a historic landmark application associated with the Intelsat building, or 4000 Connecticut, or 3400 International Drive. That's all the same building. That was submitted by the DC Preservation League. The hearing on that by the board will take place on Thursday, April 25th. So that means our ANC will have another opportunity to weigh in on that on April 19th. When is our next meeting in April? Anybody?
I think it's the 20th.
Excuse me. April 16th. So we have more than a week before that. I've asked the DC Preservation League to make a presentation to us, and also have given notification to the Whittle School and trying to reach the owner as well. If there's anybody else that has an architectural interest, historical, cultural interest in the building, would like to make a presentation in favor or potentially against the application, I'll note that that same DC Preservation League submitted an application in 2014. This ANC actually considered it at the time. I don't see meeting minutes on it or a resolution, but my recollection, because I was attending that meeting, was that generally speaking, my predecessor was not in favor of it. There are certain criteria associated with the historic landmark, and I can't speak for the whole commission at the time, but I recall that there was some opposition to it. And the board ultimately did not act on it. I don't know if they rejected it at the time, but an interesting process. I also wanted to let folks know that there are a couple of ABRA applications that have been submitted. Those will, we've got a little bit of time on those as well. As an ANC, we typically adopt settlement agreements or recommendations as to the hours of serving alcohol, what's going on outside, inside the restaurant or bar, how long they serve food, etc. Those applications that I have are TIPAD and Acacia. I don't know, commissioners, if there are any others that you have received. But typically we try to be efficient and handle as many of those as possible, so stay tuned on that. I know we have folks from at least the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. Just be mindful that next month is, we have Earth Day on April 22nd. I believe the Rock Creek Conservancy is doing some massive park cleanups the weekend prior, around April 14th. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but it'll pop up to me during the meeting. I don't think I have anything else. Anyone else on updates? So we will turn to committee reports. Is there anyone here that would like to provide an update on Parks and Trails? Alex?
Sure.
Great. Come on up if you don't mind.
So my name is Alex Sanders. I'm the chair of the Parks and Trails Committee, and I've got a couple of things to let you know about. The first is just come up in the last couple of days, and that is that the Park Service has put out its environmental assessment of the Nature Center Complex project. Comments are available now, and I think they run until maybe the 18th or so of April. So the public is welcome to go up on the Park Service Pepsi website. It's PEPC, and go to the Rock Creek Complex project and read over it and supply your comments to it. The second will regard our meeting about a week ago. The Parks and
Alex,
Trails
can I
Committee.
just add, the Park Service is having a public meeting on the Nature Center.
They are. The 4th, maybe? Early April?
You go on and I'll find it. Which is over here, Church.
The Parks and Trails Committee also met last Monday, and we invited a member of DOEE, Andrew Oakland, to speak about the River Smart suite of programs. This is the voluntary component of the district's attempt to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff in the district that has such a negative effect on our parks and our trails. Mr. Open presented again on the River Smart suite of projects, which concerns several different smaller programs within that. River Smart Homes, which is for primarily single-family homes. River Smart Communities, which is now directed at nonprofits and houses of worship. But one of the things that we're most interested in is learning about the new programs for multifamily residences and some of the work they're doing around providing rebates for permeable pavers, which could be used for almost any commercial or residential structure. And so we received, I think, a very informative briefing on that. We're going to be putting together our notes on that and providing that to the committee shortly. And we encourage anyone who lives in the area, which presumably is most, if not all of you, to check out the River Smart suite of programs. Like I said, they have them for homes, they have them for houses of worship, got connections there, and as well for multi-family buildings. So it's a really important way of reducing the amount of runoff and pollution that go into our streams and that affect our natural areas.
Alex, are they still offering any rebates or any grants for doing some of that River Smart work?
So the answer is yes. They have several different programs that are oriented towards different types of structures. And so it's a little complicated to explain right now because some of them have caps and some of them don't. But the general answer is yes. It depends on what kind of program you've got. Some are rebates, some they'll actually pay for it out of pocket. So it just depends on what you've got and what you want to go in.
Okay, so they still are offering something, right?
Yes, most certainly. The River Smart Homes program is very popular. I think they've audited some 12,000 homes in the district since it started in 2009 or so. And about 65% of those homes have actually installed something. But there is a time lag of that for about 3 or 4 months after you request an audit. But they will do the audit completely free of charge and then provide you with avenues with which to connect to different nonprofits to come in and actually have the work done.
One other quick question. There's not been any update on the environmental study for the pumping station, right? For the.
You mean Soapstone?
Yeah, for Soapstone.
No,
Okay.
we are still waiting on the DC Water and the Park Service to release that.
Is there anything that we as an ANC can do?
I don't think so. My understanding is that the Park Service has reviewed DC Water submission, and they are now in some process of going back and forth. I've been told that DC Water wants to start construction by the end of this year, but then we've heard a lot of things about deadlines that haven't quite been realized so far. So I'm not sure I would take that at face value right now, but I think we look forward to receiving it. I think there'll be a lot of interest in it, a lot of discussion, and it will have a very significant impact, not only on the immediate health of Soapstone, but also access. I've been told that it's very likely that when that project starts, that Soapstone in its entirety will be closed for the 2 years it will take to do that project. So there will be no public access.
And I'm sure there's going to be some impact on the adjoining residences, I would think, too.
Yeah, that seems to be likely, particularly on Audubon Terrace, where they're going to have to access part of the Soapstone. So.
I just wanted to add that there is a public meeting on the Rock Creek Nature Center environmental assessment report. It's April 3rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Nature Center, which is up, what they call it, Glover Road, up on the ridge in the park.
5,200.
Alex, can you inform the community when your committee meets?
We meet on the second Monday of every month at 7 p.m. Up at
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills, what's the
Center.
name of it? Center?
Retirement home.
Retirement
center
home, yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Forest Hills of DC.
Forest Hills of DC.
Yeah.
So I know we have a couple of community members that have an interest in the Melvin Hazen Park. And I don't want to take the microphone from them, and I would encourage them to speak up at the right time as well. But I would like to recommend, and we're going to have some people from DGS and DPR here later as well, but at that April 10th meeting, and you and I have spoken about this before, to try to bring in as many relevant stakeholders as possible from Park Service, DOEE, Rock Creek Conservancy, who are, from DPR, people that are affiliated with the park project, people that are familiar with River Smart, people that are familiar with what's going on with this tributary. There's a lot of concern about stormwater runoff and the degradation of Melvin Hazen. I'm not sure how to get our arms around the whole thing. There's lots of different moving pieces associated with that, but I would like to recommend that we at least think about that for April or May, that we bring people in to have sort of a holistic look at that tributary.
I think that's a good idea. I think that it may be difficult to arrange that for April, since
Right.
if we're talking about several different parties, it takes quite a bit of lead time often to get people out.
And what we could do is have a planning session in April for those folks that are interested, and then with an eye toward May as well.
We're also planning on inviting, I think we already had invited, another person from the district to talk about the Green Alleys program.
The pervious in the alleys.
Yes.
Terrific,
That's a good one.
terrific.
So
Thank you.
there's been a lot of changes within DC's suite of stormwater programs, and we've been taking this opportunity to update ourselves and get this information out to the community as much as we can.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for your time.
I'll do streets and sidewalks.
Okay, the streets and sidewalks next.
I went to work off my notes here. So, I'm taking off my commissioner hat and putting on my member of committee hat right now. Bob David couldn't make it tonight, so I'm going to fill in on the two meetings that we've had with respect to streets and sidewalk, interests and topics and issues. There was a meeting with Metropolitan Police Department over at the Second District on April 4th or April.
March.
Oh, I'm sorry, March, yeah. Too much talking about April. Last couple of weeks ago. One of the reasons we met with them was to kind of get an idea of where MPD's purview started with respect to anything that was going on with traffic, and where DDOT's purview started. Because there's been a little bit of back and forth about the fact that sometimes those two purviews don't overlap, and there's gaps between the two groups that are responsible for various things. Generally speaking, MPD is responsible for enforcing whatever DDOT comes up with in terms of traffic flow and recommendations for lanes, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the reasons that this was particularly important is because last year, the Streets and Sidewalk and the ANC, together with several other ANCs up and down the Connecticut Avenue corridor, commissioned or asked DDOT to do a fairly extensive traffic study from Chevy Chase all the way down to Woodley Park, of the traffic flow, especially with respect to the reversible lanes. I think we've been talking about that, so a lot of you might be aware of that discussion. They have received their final comments. They have a pretty good scope now that they have issued for retaining a consultant to actually do the study. We haven't gotten an update on that. I think Bob has reached out to get that update. We have a meeting scheduled with Rich on Friday, right, to talk a little bit more about trying to grease the wheels on DDOT and make sure that we put a process in place that allows us as a community to get updates on what the traffic study is, and most people just to go shopping is a real concern. Sometimes there's not enough time to even cross the street. That, with respect to some of the problems with streetlights being out and lack of, like the Upton Street study, lack of the proper signage to direct that flow, are all things that this traffic study needs to survey. And so we've been with MPD. They are aware of that traffic study. They are going to be engaging VDOT to make sure that they're fully apprised and kind of in the loop as part of the team that's doing the study. And as I said, we're going to continue to try to find out exact dates, pinpoint when it's going to start, who the consultant's going to be, and what the process is for community engagement. And that's what we're doing on Friday. Keep you posted.
Thank you, Carolyn. Andrew, would you like to do an update on grants?
There's really no, yeah, the update is we have 3 grant applications that we'll hear about later. We'll consider them in between, and we'll take a vote on them next month.
Take a vote on them, and then they're fundable arguably at that point.
Excuse me?
Once we vote on them in April, that they would theoretically be fundable at that point.
Yeah, then they can either get
There was a
the money or
question
not.
about that earlier, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that is it for the committee reports. We have a community forum,
And then we also, following that, have a presentation from PR and DGS. I just want to make sure, is Peter here yet? He's on his way. Okay, so we will start now with our community forum. Can I get a raise of hands for those that are planning to speak during their community forum? So we have 3 ladies and Mr. Rich in the
I
back.
would just call them the usual suspects.
The usual 4. So why don't we go with Juanita, Teresa, and Marlene, and then Bob, and then Rich. You want to?
Thank you. Juanita Gray, University of the District of Columbia. So hopefully everyone was at Mayor's State of the District yesterday, but if we weren't, she did announce that the city will be funding the university in purchasing 4250 Connecticut Avenue, which is the building next door. So we're very excited about that. We thank the commission for all of their work and just being supportive of the university in that effort. We still need additional funding, so she did announce that, but she didn't announce the rest of the money that she may or may not be giving to the university. So any help that we can get from the community in terms of calling the mayor's office, writing city council, supporting the university would greatly appreciate it from the commission as well. Talk about the commission later.
Sure.
So the next community campus task force meeting will be Thursday, April 11th at 6:30 p.m. We'll be emailing that out to all of the committee members.
I'm sorry, when is that?
Thursday, April 11th. If there are any committee members or committee members who would like to attend, it is open for all advanced committees, and we do encourage you all to come. At that meeting.
Where is the meeting, Juanita? I'm sorry.
I haven't, location TBA, but I'll send it to you. At the meeting, the university will begin the process of updating our student code of conduct. So we will be sending it to committee members for any feedback that you all would like to offer on the student code of conduct. Let's see, we do have our Vita tax clinics that are continuing to go on. They're Monday and Wednesday, 2 to 5:30 p.m. and then Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Those were all in building 38, which is this building on the 3rd floor with 305. So any district resident who needs healthcare taxes, we do offer free tax clinics for residents. And that's pretty much all I got.
That's great. When does that tax clinic open?
It opens, when did it open?
Or what days of the week are they available now?
Monday, Wednesday from 2 to 5:30 p.m. and then Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And
Where
again,
is
that's
that?
Building 38, room 305.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for hosting the mayor as well. Hope that went well.
It did, went really well.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Teresa and then Marlene? I'm sorry.
Everybody, welcome tonight. Teresa Cameron, Van Ness Main Street. Of course, there's lots going on in Van Ness. Last Friday, we launched our Live at the End which is our new event throughout the year, which celebrates many things in Van Ness, including dance, visual arts, salons, music, and that replaces Jazz-a-Vian. And so our next event will be on April 26th, which is our annual meeting at 8:30 in the morning. And we have many other activities coming up, and it's all at our website, vansmainstreet.org. Farmers Market starts May 5th, and we're in the process of looking for non-food vendors. We have an application that's on our website. So we're super excited about that because we're averaging about 1,500 people a weekend to our market. So if you know people who are artists or creatives who would like to participate, just send them to our website. We're also looking for community committee members for our Economic Development Committee, our Design Committee, and our Events and Promotions Committee. So if you know people who live in the neighborhood, who are really interested in what's going on in Van Ness, please have them email me, and they can go to info@vansmainstreet.org, and I'm happy to meet with them to talk to them about being part of our committee. So those are our small things. The last thing, I guess, is that March 20th starts our cherry blossom specials in the district, and several of our restaurants and businesses are going to be offering cherry blossom specials. So look for the cherry blossoms on their doors and windows, and we hope you'll come and celebrate the Cherry Blossom Festival in Van Ness.
Thank you. Ms. Berlin?
Hello, I'm Marlene Berlin, the editor of Forest Hills Connection, which is our online hyperlocal news publication. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to have a tour of the stream, of the daylighted Broadband stream on April 7th, which is a Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. Cecilia Lane from the Department of Energy, or the Environment, will be leading the tour, and the Rock Creek Conservancy will also be there. We really need to find someone or a group of people who will be willing to take care of the stream area and its trail. So hopefully this tour will bring forth some of those people. But if you know of anyone, or if anyone of you would be interested, please let me know. And again, you can contact me through info@foresthillsconnection.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob? Did you have something?
My name is Bill Metzelevich. I live at 3707 Greenhill Road, Cleveland, Oregon. I've been a resident here for about 20 years. I'm a frequent user of the Melvin Hazen tributary, and over the past 5 to 8 years, I've noticed a particular decline in the tributary due to stormwater influx. I spent a lot of time over the last couple of years, as I know the ANC has, and you probably are aware that there's 3 resolutions you submitted since 2015 that deal with stormwater management issues in the Melvin Hazen watershed, of which that tributary runs down the backbone. Some of the efforts that I've undertaken was back in, I believe it was November of 2017, I attended the Parks and Trails meeting and happened to sit next to the superintendent of the Rock Creek National Park. And at that meeting, one of the things that I expressed, I think the term I used at the time was, it's a mess. Since then, I've personally walked through the tributary with the superintendent in April of last year. And Mr. Dickinson walked through with me in November together with representatives from the National Park Service, the Rockwood Conservancy, and members from Neighbors for First Park, which is a community organization that's very much involved with the development of First Park, and in particular, the environmental impact of that and what it might mean relative to stormwater management. Where we're at right now is, Mr. Dickinson, I sent you a letter a week ago. I wanted to know whether or not you received it, and if you plan to respond to that.
I plan to respond to it, and that's what I was purposely engaging Alex and engaging you before the start of the meeting. If you've got other ideas on how you would like to bring together the stakeholders, I'm all ears for that.
Well, I think the issue is, as you know, the resolutions have been, ongoing for years now. The destruction has been ongoing for years now. And I think we can identify two sources of the destruction, basically. One is the failure of the district to maintain infrastructure. There's excessive pooling because the district has failed to clear the culvert underneath Connecticut Avenue. The National Park Service has assessed that the damage is so excessive and the amount of stormwater that is now going into the tributary will damage the tributary and the national park land downstream as it goes into Rockwood Park. So the National Park Service is not in favor of clearing the culvert.
They're not in favor.
They're not in favor of doing that. But interestingly enough, I wonder what would be the case had the district done the maintenance and had kept that culvert clear. The other thing that's become clear, and I want to be mindful of the time of others. I don't want to take this all because, as I said, this has been going on for years. The other thing to know is the district has not been maintaining the storm water sewage system. We know that because we have films of water streaming down Springland Lane, not following the sewer system, going into the tributary. And we also know that because the district is required, when they do the maintenance, to put a sticker on each of the manhole covers when they do the service on those, on the sewer system. You walk down Tillman Street, you walk down Reno Road, you walk down to the sewer system, which has manhole covers located on the property, and there's no stickers, or maybe one or two manhole covers, but by and large they don't. So the district has not been doing the maintenance, and that's a stormwater management issue. The other problem we have is there are development projects in the works, such as First Park, which intentionally plans to put more stormwater into an already overpassed stormwater system going into the tributary. So these issues have been highlighted. They've been highlighted in any number of ways. The National Park Service, they've been highlighted by resolutions from both ANC3F and ANC3C. They've been highlighted by public testimony before Mary Che at the annual budget hearings for the previous 2 years that I'm aware of, maybe even 3 years. I testified before last year. The question really is here, the stakeholders know. The stakeholders have been informed. The stakeholders haven't responded. So the question is, and this is what I would appeal to the ANC, is what do we do now? What do we do?
What recommendations do you have?
I'd like to hear what you have to say. You're the elected official.
Right?
You are to represent the community and take our issues
So you've mentioned,
to our representative.
you've mentioned
And
that.
I would like to hear, rather than you ask me the questions, I would like to ask you what you plan to do.
Well, I appreciate your time and your concern and your hard work on this. And you're absolutely right. You guys have been diligent. Many people have been very diligent about the issues around the tributary. In addition to the resolutions, the only other thing that I can recommend off the top of my head, as I mentioned earlier, is we try to grab those people for face-to-face conversations collectively and use the parks and trails. If you have other ideas, I'm welcome to them. That's my idea currently. If other commissioners have ideas on how to engage those folks.
So I understand that you have no ideas. I brought a copy in case you hadn't
Excuse me,
seen it.
I don't appreciate that.
Well, I don't
You're
appreciate the
welcome
fact
to-
that you, well, if you don't have any ideas, that's fine, I understand.
Right.
You have no ideas. I've had a number of ideas that I've put on the table and tried to bring people together, including yourself. We've had
Right.
stakeholders. We've walked through the change area. What I would like to know is what else you want me to do. Okay, thanks for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to the attention of ANC. It's an ongoing issue. It is a serious issue that park, that national park land is being destroyed. And I would welcome the opportunity to walk through with anyone to show them how it's being destroyed.
We do have somebody from the mayor's office, and you have mentioned several, at least district officials opposed to Park Service. And Rich, I don't know if you've got any ideas or be willing. I know you're coming up next anyway.
I'd love to do that because I've been in touch with the mayor's office before and haven't received a response. So please, give me your information. I'd love to contact you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, commissioners. Thanks for having me. My name is Rich Harrington, and I'm the Ward 3 liaison to the mayor's office for this ANC. And I just want to give you my contact information so that you have it. So you can contact me about any questions or concerns that you have in your neighborhood. Again, my name is Rich Harrington, and that is RICHHARRINGTON. And my email address is my first name dot my last name at tc.gov. You can also call me on my personal cell. All hours of the night, I'm happy to answer. And so my phone number is 202-341-7706. 341-7706. So I just wanted to briefly say, as Ms. Gray mentioned, last night Mayor Bowser gave her State of the District address here at the University of the District of Columbia. I do want to thank everybody who was there in person and who followed along online. Ms. Cameron was on stage behind the mayor last night, and I saw a few commissioners there as well. Mayor Bowser spoke about some of her priorities for the upcoming fiscal year, including affordable housing, investment in seniors, including increased investments in the Safe at Home program, and transportation, including making the DC circuit completely free. I do want to mention that tomorrow at 9 a.m., Mayor Bowser will be presenting the 2020 fiscal budget to the council at the John A. Wilson Building. So I do recommend staying in touch and following along and seeing what's in it. Any questions?
Thanks, Rich.
Of course.
Any other community announcements? So we next have,
Okay, one other real quick thing, can I just, and this kind of pile, I might as well do it here. We're going into spring now, and people are gonna be out on the streets, and they're gonna start noticing that a lot of our streets and sidewalks are kind of a mess. So that's another thing that the Street and Sidewalk Committee talked about a little bit, and I have gotten some reports already in my SMD about some issues where people have tripped and fallen on some of the problem areas. Anybody that is experiencing problems or notices an issue, it's a safety issue especially for people who are mobilely impaired, and they should report it. They should report it either to their ANC commissioner or to 311 or to the building next door, but it should be reported, so let us know. Or Rich, you have a cell phone. And this is what we're going to talk about on Friday.
Carolyn, we have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Are there any streets in particular that you should be looking out for that will be less?
I'm in the building complex over here in Van Ness, and I've gotten some reports about a lot of the sidewalks that are in the cul-de-sac on VZ Terrace. So if you happen to be in that area, up and down, especially along the subway, the metro station and stuff, and the Giant and all the public spaces, if you see something that's really out of whack, go ahead and report it. More the merrier, put some pressure on people. So.
And I'm sorry, do residents report this to 311 or is public streets, and where would be the best
I'm sorry, say that.
What would be the best method for residents to alert any back roads or sidewalks or something? Would it be 311 or mayor or?
311, yeah, 311 would be the best. May I have your name, please, just for a minute?
Oh, sorry, I'm Tori Powell.
Tori.
This
And
is current.
so 311 would be one place to start, but there's also a little nuance with this. The district is not, DDOT is not necessarily completely responsible for all the sidewalks. So if it's sidewalks that's actually on private property, the owner of the building is responsible for the maintenance of those. So just be aware of that. So you might have to report it to 311, but you also might have to report it to the ANC commissioner as well. That would be a good place to start, okay?
Thank you. Any other follow-up on community announcements? We will next hear from representatives from DPR and DGS, or at least DPR and I believe the architect on Hurst Park.
Sorry, thank you, Commissioner. Is the projector working or the screen? We had put together a strong presentation. Just plug it in. Thank you.
Great.
All right, sorry about that. Thank you all for bearing with me for a second there. I'll probably have to stand here actually to click. All right, so I wanted to give tonight basically some updates on where we are with the project. Real quick, I'm Peter Norden with DC Parks and Recreation. I have also with me, where'd you go, Jamie?
She went out.
Oh, okay, sorry. DGS, we have Jamie Johnson, and then we also have the architect, Tom Wheeler here from Cox Graceback as well. So we kind of wanted to go catch up, get you all up to date where we are right now. We're also planning a community meeting, which will be way more in depth than even what we're going to go through tonight. At the end of April, we're looking at a tentative date, if you can just pencil it in for April 23rd. We have yet to confirm 100%, but that is our tentative date. We'll put out flyers as soon as that's,
Sorry, April
23rd, Tuesday night. We pretty much 100%. So for the agenda, what I wanted to go through was kind of 10 issues tonight. Basically, go through the progress since the last meeting, project overview, grading plans, trails, biofiltration, signage, and site furnishings, playground, pool layout, and we put together some nice street renderings as well for tonight. And then we have landscape plans and images, next steps as well.
Peter, can you send us these slides?
I can absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And we will post it, just so everybody knows, we'll post this whole thing onto the DGS website as well. And if you all don't know that, I'm happy to give you the links afterwards as well. So just so you know what we've been doing over the winter, since I think our last meeting was in November, was the stormwater management remediation is still going through permit review. They've sent us notes. We've sent them back resolutions for those, so that's still going back and forth right now with DOEE. Right now, we had already announced at the last meeting that the general contractor, Blue Sky Construction, has been awarded, and since then, we've been working with them to clean up some of the budgets, make sure that everything's working and planned out for the schedule for phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, as well as all the permits we need right now. Just for a little backstop, we have, if anybody doesn't know the project, we have phase 1, which is the park improvements, phase 2, which is the pool and pool house improvement. We do need to go into permits for a lot of this together because of the impact they have with each other. So that's a little bit of background there. Basically where we are right now with the BSIB permit is that's also going through DOEE. We've been going back and forth with them as well. And we have the foundation grade to grade permit also being reviewed by all agencies right now. Basically, we're planning to submit the building permit within the week as well. So that's a little update on DCRA permitting. This is just kind of a quick overview of what the project entails. This is more for people who are not familiar with the project. But basically within Hearst Park, that's Wisconsin Avenue up there, we're bounded here by 37th Quebec and Iowa. So this is northbound this way, and this Hearst School is up here. So we'll be doing some work in the playground as well. But the newly graded field, we're going to be putting in irrigation and working on a whole new drainage plan and controlling all the stormwater that lands on that field and putting that into stormwater retention areas. We'll also be installing an irrigation system for the summer when we have drought periods. Within the playground, the big request from the community were playground shade structures and replacing some of the equipment. We also have a walking trail, which will now loop the entire field. It will be completely ADA accessible from Hearst School, Hearst Rec Center, down the hill to Iowa Avenue. There's stairs all on 37th Street. And you'll be able to connect to the new placement of the tennis courts, which is just south or just east of where they are currently. Yes, so again, this is 37th Street, that's north, Hearst School here, that's Quebec, and this is Iowa coming here. This is the Iowa. Idaho, sorry. I apologize. So what else do we have? We're going to be doing a substantial tree planting throughout the site. We will be removing some trees as well because we have to excavate deep to get the new walls for the pool house. So there'll be some trees removed in that area. However, we'll be doing extensive tree protection to protect the heritage trees. The heritage trees are to the south and east here. So we went through ADA improvements, vegetation, and basically pool house, and then currently you have 3 tennis courts. We'll be going down to 2 tennis courts. We'll still have a practice wall, but you'll be gaining a 25-yard pool and pool house with a 0 entry. This is the grading plan, so we can share this with you if anybody wants to review this in more detail, but this is how the field will drain out. It's going to have a high point through the center and then basically drain out to the north, so to either side. And that on either side there'll be bio retention basins. This is just moving down. The 2 slides are connected because there's too much information at this level, but that's the lower southern end of the field. So currently we have concrete walkways. Some of those will remain, but a lot of them will be replaced. Wherever we do replace any of the pathways, especially under the heritage trees, will be put on to actually almost like a floating walkway. So it's what they use in docks, in lakes, and waterways, because they basically have a large footing, but are not dug into the ground. So prevent damage to any of the existing roots. It'll also help where we have grading issues for connecting in some of the slopes. So some areas which are not even in the heritage zone, but we'll still want to use the same system to keep it consistent and look nice throughout the park. As far as where the biofiltration will be, for the bulk of it will be to the east of the field, so capturing it before it runs down the hill, and then also to the west. And if you remember the grading plan I just showed you, I know we keep orienting you back and forth, I'm sorry about that, but this is north again, so the water's being pushed up towards that northwest corner and down mainly towards the northeast. And those areas basically will catch all the rainwater from the field, and disturbed areas will be run down there as well. As you can see, though, there's also some wooden, so none of the platforms will actually be real wood. We're going to be using synthetic products like a Trex type of product, if you're familiar with that, which will be a lot longer lasting. And these are basically areas where people can sit and watch soccer games at either end, which are ADA accessible.
Will the water drain to an on-site retention pond?
Correct. So these are what we call bioretention, so they don't hold water for more than 24 hours. Correct. Yeah, we put them in blue to try to exactly show that. They have overflows, so basically what these do is to clarify, the DOE, Department of Energy and Environment requirement is that we capture, for any disturbed areas, the first 1.2 inches within 24 hours. So there will be storms, especially in June and July, where we get these big flash storms that can be up to 3 inches. Sometimes in DC is common. But still, the 1.2 inches is set as a threshold because that's 95, I think it's between 90 and 95% of storms in DC. Historically, yes. Both of these areas have basically a pipe that's standing, let's say, this high. When the water were to raise that high, it would then flow into that pipe with the overflow. It's kind of like in a sink, you have drain holes, so when the water comes to that level, it would then go into those pipes and use that out into the existing storm system.
Before you continue, is there any stormwater remediation plan?
Tom, can you explain some of that?
Sure. So,
This is for
so I'm Tom Wheeler again with Cox Raceback.
This is for them to record.
Okay, sure. So, Peter explained the stormwater remediation at the field. So what you're seeing here, actually, can you go back a slide or two? All right there. So, this is the swimming pool. So the pool footprint is here, and the pool building is here. So the pool deck is designed to drain to a drain that bounds the swimming pool, so there's no water running off of the pool area. So the other hardscape area here is the tennis court, and so that has a slight pitch to the east, and that's going to drain out into a series of inlets that are around the perimeter of the tennis court. We also have a slope coming down from the south to the north along Quebec here. And so you'll see this big dark line is basically the stormwater pipe. And so there are a series of inlets at the bottom of that hill that pick up all that water. So in short, there's a system either on the pool deck that picks up all the rainwater there, or in the case of the tennis courts, it flows off and into inlets that occur along the east side of the site.
How does that meet the 1.2 requirement?
So along this area, I believe that what happens here is this, you see this pipe here pipes down to the bioretention pond there. So all the water that's coming into here is going into this, and it's all part of that calculation.
And that's engineered big, large enough to capture that.
Right.
So Quebec is actually higher, the south part of the.
That's right. Quebec is approximately 16 feet above the level of the existing tennis courts.
So the water flowing down Spring Lane going out of the Rock Alley, will capture things like underground to the sewer system?
That's correct, yeah.
Now,
Right. So if it's over the 1.2, as Peter described,
right.
it will go into inlets, and so that bioretention pond he showed is basically along here. So again, you can see the piping that's coming and running around the field and connecting in, and then what we do is we come over here and we connect into an existing stormwater line. So that's the intent, is for that water to stay on the site.
And I don't understand the maintenance of this. I mean, vials, swells and so forth get silted up and so forth. So are these pipes cleaned out every year so the mud and dirt that collects is breathed out or do they overflow?
So they shouldn't get silted up. I mean, all of this, this is going to be a new grass field, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of silt running off of this. I can't speak to the maintenance aspect of it. Obviously, Peter with DPR can speak to that, but it's designed to be a system that, unlike sand filters, which we used to use, that had to be cleaned out every year. They had to come and take the sand out to replace it, to get rid of the oils that accumulated. These are meant to be natural elements that don't require the same type of maintenance as those do.
So I have two questions.
Yeah, and then
One
maybe we'll,
fleshes out, but let's go.
we'll do this, and then we'll go through the whole slideshow.
Okay, so the existing stormwater system that goes into, that's the Springman Lane stormwater system?
Right?
It's, yeah, it's existing.
It's in the Idaho Avenue right away.
Right. And that goes into the Melville.
Correct.
Right.
And the other question I had was, about a year ago, there was a big study that was going on between DOT and DPR relative to why the drain was falling out, the field was flooding. And we had found that there were a number of drains that were actually not being maintained, and flow meters that were put in. Whatever happened to all that?
So we cleaned out all the drains in the field, and, snaked them out and used water jets to clean them out. We found a lot of debris, right? They were not maintained over the years. Some of them were actually buried completely under dirt and invisible, so doing very little work. So as of right now, those are as a temporary fix because that will all be removed.
So just an observation, the field still floods excessively.
Correct.
And we have to show you pictures of pictures.
Yeah, I like to put that in the parking lot together.
Yeah,
I have a very huge concern about that as well.
Right.
It's
This corner, the northwest corner,
Yeah, well, you're gonna direct all that other water.
we're putting a new system in, yeah. Right. So, yeah, the old system is not adequate, that's for sure. So we'll be replacing that. But let me just go through the rest. It's not that long, and that way we can really delve into whichever kind of questions you want to talk about tonight. So this is one of the ideas. It's a little bit conceptual still at this time, but the idea is to have some, not full bleachers, but sitting areas. We may change that a little bit depending on what the community feedback is like, but we just want to give the sense that we would have boardwalks, we would have native vegetations, we could have pollinator gardens, try to do a lot of native plantings in there. As far as maintenance, I know that's going to come up, so I'll just tell you, DGS is right now in the midst of restructuring, and they're implementing a stormwater management crew, which will be then maintaining all stormwater retention basins in the city, because that's been something that's been a big issue in the past 3 years. Just to give you some sense of what kind of signage to expect within the park. It looks a little big, I know, from this picture, but basically, if you're familiar with our signs, we have a typical Hearst Park and Pool. That will be on the 37th and Quebec corner. The number 2 CC would just be a smaller sign indicating Hearst Park. That would be down at Idaho Avenue. And 3 is kind of like a message board, similar to what you have now, but we have a more standardized one now. A little less vandal-proof, or more vandal-proof. Number 4 is park guidelines, and so we have a couple of those throughout the site. This one, there's 2 different versions. One is, you'll see the big issue that always comes up is dogs. So one is absolutely no dogs, so that goes on courts, so tennis courts. Whereas in the playground, whereas the one where a dog can be on leash would be for the field, although they shouldn't be on there when the kids are playing. Park closes at dark, we would have no smoking, and then we actually have a standard athletic field rules guide as well as tennis court rules guide. So, site furnishings, these are all pretty standard for us. Sorry, it's fine. We have bike racks that will be coming in up on 37th at the pool entrance as well as on the Idaho Avenue entrance. New benches throughout, that's kind of our standard park bench, whereas this is more one that would go into a tennis court. This would be up near the entrance, a wooden clad one of the pool. Standard trash cans. We'll also be adding 2 drinking fountains onto the site, one by the tennis courts, 3 rather, one by the tennis courts, one by the soccer field, and then one actually on the pool deck. As far as what the upgrades in the playground are going to be, we're going to be adding a few umbrella type seating bench within the playground. There's 2 on either side of the center of the playground, between the 2 playgrounds. We will be adding these type of shade sails up here. We're working with the school PTA on that. We're also, the big thing that'll be changed is we're going to be adding a new slide and climbing structure, and that's all the way on the far west you see over here. And so we'll be adding a new slide out, replacing an old piece that was in there. And there's nothing there right now. We'll also be adding some new trees for long-term shade canopy as well. Just a quick overview. I know a lot of you have seen this before, but basically this yellow line you see to the north is where the existing tennis courts are right now. We're going to be pulling back the limits of our constructions further south to try to maintain 42 to 45 feet from any of the heritage trees. They're also up a hill. This is basically a rendering. This is looking from the air. Nobody would actually see this, but this is kind of a northeastern looking view. This is again a bird view, but looking to the south. So that's the pool house. These are where people would come in and out of the lockers. We'll have a zero entry into the pool, and then a 75-foot 6-lane lap pool. We'll also have one interesting thing is this is 37th Street here. We'll have a buffer with plantings. There'll be trees here as well, and a fence for that drop off. But we'll also be vegetating the roofs of these lower roofs. And the only thing that will pop up will be the entrance into the pool house, which you would then proceed down either stairs or an elevator. This is what the conceptual view of it would look like from 37 in Quebec. So looking diagonally across, you're not going to lose a lot of the view out here because that's the pool deck is down below. We'd actually have a little plaza patio in the corner here. And then the pool house, you see, we try to make it as least imposing to the neighborhood as possible, but still, modern and a really nice ADA accessible entrance. Yes. That part that we call parapet, but you have to have that for ADA entrance in the building. So that's kind of like the lobbies.
So that's new.
No. No, this is just an updated rendering, but it's always been above. It has to be above here for people coming in at the street level.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Any questions? We'll do the commissioner questions.
This is on Quebec Street. We're going to have a location where we have to bring the trash up. It's going to be coming up. It will just look like a gate, but what it is a lift that will only lift trash up. You won't even hardly be able to see it back here behind the fence. Will match with the wrought iron. But this is where the staff would come up through that gate, which is always locked. And they would offload the trash, bring it out to the curb when the trash pickup is. So trying to make that as least impact to the neighborhood, especially the people who live opposite the side of the street, because that's what they'll be looking at. This is looking further down Quebec Street with the tennis courts below. So again, everything will be planted up. Of course, it will take time to come back to where it is now, but that's the idea. This is just a kind of a rendering of the overall site with existing and new tree plantings to give you a sense of, it'll still be well vegetated and really going to spend a lot of time on those plants. So just quickly going through, this will be on the slideshow so you can look at it at your own convenience, but basically this is kind of an idea of some of the trees, shrubs, grasses, native plantings, perennials that we would put into the site. Just to go quick, basically, like I said, this will be posted on DGS. We'll also share it with ANC. The next meeting, again, like I said, this is a tentative. We haven't put out flyers yet, but we're pretty sure it's going to work for April 23rd. The field restoration at this point, if all permits go as planned, we're hoping to start the field work this summer. Same with the stormwater work, both in the bioretention areas of the field itself, as well as the Idaho right-of-way. The playground construction, we've been talking to the school about this right now, and we were tentatively talking about doing it this spring, but we think it makes a lot more sense to wait until school's out. DPR will not be holding any summer camps on this site this summer because the field's going to be offline with this plan. So we made sense with the school and DPR to wait and do playground in June once school lets out. So be it like June, July, hopefully 2 to 3 weeks would be all it would take to do that. With that being said, if all permits fall in line, we are hoping to start the construction for the pool deck, tennis courts which is phase 2 in the fall of 2019. If that works, we should have the pool open by Memorial Day of 2020. So,
I'm going to go ahead and just have the commissioners ask a few questions. I know there are probably several members of the community that have questions as well. Just regarding the upper playground more quickly, it sounds like that might start after school, as you just mentioned. The lights have been out there since you and I talked about that. Any update on the lights?
no, but we've had DGS go out there, and I don't know, they had a private company go look at them, but I'll follow up on that.
I like a responsible thing.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get to you.
So this upper soccer field, the drainage, currently at least one of them is a pipe that kind of goes out near the cottage, the red cottage, and then it sort of funnels down into this thing that ends up flooding Springfield Lane.
From the artificial turf
The
field.
artificial. Do you know if that is going to be addressed, or if that pipe is going to be into this new file or something, last fall?
It's not currently in these plans, but I wasn't aware of the issue, so we can certainly look at that.
We need to talk about
Yeah.
that, and that's a significant contributor as well. Can you describe the turf that you're using for the soccer field?
So yeah, all our sites now, we used to have some warm weather turf fields, which were basically Bermuda type grasses, but now all our fields are what we call cool season grasses, so they're about 80% bluegrass, 10% rye, 10% fescue. And so that's our new mix. So it's a really nice verdant green year round, but it's also a strong one during the summer. This field will also have irrigation, so.
Do you have an example of a field that's like that I can look at and see sure it really is fertile?
Yeah, I can send you some. Well, the key thing is having the irrigation. A lot of our fields that don't have irrigation really get, killed during the summer.
Irrigation and drainage.
Right, exactly, so.
So next on our agenda is this public space permit.
Right.
And I'd like to sort of lead these together now, and we have Tom here as well.
Yeah.
You had highlighted the garbage exit, if you will, on Quebec. And one of my concerns was that there would be a curb cut associated with that. And I just want to make sure the community understands that that's not what this particular public space permit is.
Correct.
I also want to let the community know that the hearing on that public space permit will be April 25th, and our agency has until April 23rd to respond to that public space permit. So if you guys want to meet, discuss that, if you want to talk about it at our next agency as well, after we've had this community meeting, we can weigh in on that particular public space permit. But maybe one of you or Tom can describe what's in this current public space permit.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, you probably know it in more detail than I do, but basically we have no curb cuts. The big thing will be that we'll have new parking signs. The one would be in front of the entrance of the pool house itself. We do need to have a designated spot there. And then as we talked about at the trash pickup, recycling pickup, that location, we would also have signs for like delivery vehicle. So those would be the two spots that would be kind of affected to the neighbors.
And what, I know that you're.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
you asked about curb cuts and you talked about signs.
Correct, but yeah, because there are no curb cuts.
The open space application is for permission.
The public space application is for the signs, it's for the location of the bike racks, it's for planting certain trees. The public space is really from the street, I don't know, X number of feet to the sidewalk, and then X number of feet.
Correct.
The total is an 18-foot buffer from the street in. So
That's right.
whatever's going to be in those, happening in those 18-foot section around the park.
Yeah, so let me go back to a rendering to help, I know you know that, but not everybody understands what that public right-of-way is. So technically, the public right-of-way is not part of the Parks and Recreation property, though, of course, just like in front of your own home, typically there's that space which you end up maintaining between the sidewalk and the property line. So this is pretty much the property line you're seeing there. You see the building can't go past that line, but we will be changing things in front, such as you said, like a front entrance walkway, We'll be putting signage actually into that public space, as well as some of the new trees you see surrounding the property. So even these trees we'll be adding in are in the public right-of-way, the DDOT right-of-way, as well as down in here. In fact, one little detail people have asked me about in the past is why do we have a chamfer 45-degree angle on the back of this court? It's still safe play because we still have 20 feet there, but that's actually the property line right there. So that's how close we are.
So my last question then is this traffic study, parking, congestion, traffic flow, et cetera. I know that you and perhaps DPR and DGS have sort of endorsed the idea of engaging DDOT on that, and the ANC was been looking at this public space curb cut issue, and may still look at it even in this more limited context to sort of highly encourage DDOT to perform that before this thing moves further along.
Yeah, so we have reached out to DDOT. We're trying to get them to do a special meeting, kind of like what we did with DOEE when we had a special meeting last year. For those of you that don't know, looking at the stormwater, looking at the heritage trees, and basically anything that's environmentally sensitive. But we were trying to get DDOT to set up a time where they would do the same kind of meeting with the round table with those who are interested in the community to look at issues having to do with parking and any other traffic issues such as crosswalks, whether we do integrated crosswalks. The study we did, the limited study last summer, basically indicated that there wouldn't be large enough changes to traffic to require anything like new stop signs or new lights. I mean, nothing like that would change. Again, it's only during the summer that will be a larger impact to the community over the 3 months that we're open from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Well, I would like to engage with you and whoever from the community is interested in that and getting DDOT to perhaps our streets and sidewalk committee or a special breakout committee. Similarly, we've heard a lot about the larger Melvin Hazen tributary, how the difference, a variety of opinions on how to address that or be creative in figuring that out. But separately, I would like to revisit this with you and DOE and other stakeholders just with regard to the park and get a drill down on what we know about the hydrology underneath, what the stormwater remediation is. If you're going to have an overflow of 1.2 after that, what's going to happen further downstream from that case? And so look for that as well.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner?
So just a real quick question, all the parking's on the street, right?
Correct.
No on-site parking,
Yeah.
right? And one real quick question, it looks like some of the hardscape is not pervious at all. I mean, there's not a little bit of amount, but did you look into maybe using pervious pavers?
We haven't, but right now it's kind of a budgetary thing. But we could, if we've done in the past, is have some areas of the walkways pervious. Some of the walkways down here we were actually going to leave where they were concrete, because sometimes breaking them up and re-putting new walkways is actually more traumatic to the heritage trees than just leaving what's there, because they're in good shape. So those pathways, which are mainly in this area, I don't know how you can see from there, but there's basically a pathway that does a curve here. We would tie in there, but this pathway that comes in the back would remain. Of course, this is all new coming around here. So it's a mix, like you said. It's some concrete, but then it's also going to be decking, like you would see around waterways.
So we've got about 5 more minutes.
Just a couple of questions.
Yes.
There was a sign about no dogs. As Commissioner knows, every morning from 6 to 10, that's a dog park. Are those signs for show, or is the city really planning on prohibiting dogs from being on the street?
Right, so there's 2 signs. One, we put
The leash one, I mean, that's all, everybody's off the leash. All the dogs are.
So off the leash, I don't handle enforcement. Only SED does. But the reason we do put the signs, it's not just for show, it's so that if the community is very concerned about it, if it becomes a really big issue, MPD cannot enforce unless they have a sign that they can point the public to. So
And then the second quick question, I see pedestrian access to the tennis courts and the 2 stairs off of
Yes.
37, I guess that would be, is there a pedestrian access to the soccer field from Idaho?
Yeah, Okay, so this is the new pathway to the tennis courts. There was one previously, but this will be a nicer one. It'll actually be ADA accessible, so you're not going down that big steep slope. So that's the main entrance into the tennis courts. There is a back staircase here. There's also going to be a fire escape onto the courts here from the pool deck, which is also accessible. But as far as getting from the tennis courts to the field, you can come here. You'll also still be able to enter, it's further down, you can't see it, but that's one of the existing ones, right? Yeah, so that existing entrance down here will come in, connect to the field there, and then connect up to there, and then you'll have a loop track the whole way around as well.
I have one comment and one question. So first of all, I think that this design is future-proof from what we saw in the first ever particularly when it comes to stormwater, and it's very thoughtful. And I think it'll make a huge difference in the long run for the knowledge of the future. One thing I did want to encourage in regards to your attempt to bring DEI into the conversation about the street space is to broaden that conversation, talking about stormwater too, because their land is also a nature contributor to stormwater in the area. We've had, as a part of the development committee conversation, about the Idaho Avenue area, and the stormwater going through there as well. So I think that would also be a conversation.
Right, and I don't know if you knew, I didn't talk about it actually, tonight, but we talked about it in the past, is DPR and DGS are actually going to be doing some improvements. We're going to be putting a fire retention area into that stormwater, into the Idaho right-of-way, Idaho Avenue right-of-way. But it won't be enough to capture the full 1.2 inches of that right-of-way. We're basically doing this as a volunteer benefit to the community because we know how big the issue is. But unfortunately, unless DDOT were to give the amount of money that would be needed, which would probably be significant to do that, it would be a conversation we'll need to continue with that.
I'm glad that progress has been made. Any other questions?
I'm sure there'll be more questions.
Yes, and again, I didn't say this right at the end, but my contact, if anybody needs, basically for Parks and Recreation, is this is my email. My name's Peter Norden, and it's Peter Norden, HR@dc.gov. Again, this will be posted. If you need my number, raise your hand. I'm happy to give you my phone number as well. Okay, or for DGS, Department of General Services, the Community Outreach Coordinator is Wayne Gore, and that's his contact as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
As always.
Yeah, see you.
We just connected that.
I heard.
That's okay, it's not the first time.
So we are moving moving on from the Hearst Park presentation, and I will have considered that. Also a discussion of the public space application for Hearst Park. Are there any other questions on the public space application at this point?
Do we need to take some action about the public space application?
No, we do not. As I mentioned, we can weigh in up until April 23rd. I'd like an opportunity for this next community meeting to take place, and to the degree necessary, we can discuss this again at our April 16th meeting. And
But our April meeting is going to be before that community meeting.
that's probably true.
So are we going to vote on this?
We will vote on it
In
at-
April.
in April.
Okay, beautiful.
Yes. So moving on, our next agenda item is the public space application regarding Tilden Street, and I have to admit that I'm a little unprepared for that. I have the application and could not find it, but generally speaking, it is to erect, install a sidewalk from Pierce Mill on Tilden Street up to the Spring House, which is a couple hundred yards up the road in the median strip there on the north side of the street. We have until April 25th to weigh in on that one as well. And we don't currently have a commissioner representing that area, so I need to do a bit of legwork associated with that one. I will mention that that same area on Tilden, I forget the residents on the north side of the street there, but there's a big grass hill that kind of comes down to the new apple orchard. That continually has water that leaks out onto the road, onto Tilden. Many of you have biked up it. Many of you have driven up it when it's been wet and or frozen. Sorry? It might be an ambassador's residence. And somebody had just emailed our former chair, Pat Kopchak, about that, wanting to see if they can get either a DDOT or some other type of permit on that. Maybe Rich, you can help me with that as well. There's some issue with trying to get the right permits to address the water issue, and I thought, well, that's kind of convenient because somebody else is trying to put a sidewalk in there. So hopefully we can.
Who is that somebody else? Who submitted the public space application?
DDOT.
The properties are vacant condos in the city.
Vacant what, sir?
Vacant condos in the city.
Okay.
And then there's a natural spring that borders both their property and the property next door, and it's kind of unclear where that water is coming from and where
Right, so we should probably marry that potentially with, if you're gonna install a sidewalk and it gets ripped up from the water, et cetera, that there needs to be coordination there. So,
Who is applying for the public space
I bel-
permit?
again, sorry? I believe it's DDOT, but I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have the application in front of me, I'm sorry. Stay tuned.
Sorry, DDOT needs a public space
I
permit?
don't know.
Okay.
I do not know. I do not have the application. Are there any other questions on the application?
Besides that one.
The reason I ask is that Pierceville, friends of Pierceville,
Thank you. I'm now taking a note on the application, Friends of Pierce Mill and Rich to coordinate with on this. So we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is a grant application from the Wilson High School Tiger Athletic Association. And if they are here, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. Would you mind, Andrew, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, so this is the, what used to be the Wilson High School Athletic Club Boosters, basically has now made a 503c named entity that's now applying for help for the support, a grant from the ANC for the Tenley Tiger Run. They're asking for $2,500 for the t-shirts. We gave a grant for this a few years back. And so here's, I forgot your name,
My name's Debbie.
Debbie.
Do you want me to use the mic?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm Debbie Larrick. I'm with the Tenley Tiger Run. We're a 5K, 1 mile race and fun run that begins and ends at Wilson High School. We raise money for the Wilson Running Program, which covers 6 teams, girls and boys, cross country, indoor and outdoor track and field. This is our 5th year. It's a neighborhood race. It costs about $15,000 to $18,000 to put on every year. We try to raise another 15, so we have $5,000 per season to give to the teams. The bulk of that is MVD, and it's sort of an unavoidable cost if you want a parade permit. So we're grateful for the consideration of the grant. For the t-shirts, every little bit helps.
Great, thank you.
Do you have a mock-up of them? What's it gonna look like?
The t-shirt?
Oh, there you go.
And what's the total cost for your shirts?
About 2,500.
So we're gonna fund the whole, I'm
Yes, and
sorry, I
anything that's not
apologize.
used will return.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, it costs about $18K to run the race,
Yes.
and how much do you
About
expect?
10 to 12 is NPD, and then we have, I think it's 3 to 5 for the registration and timing company.
But how much are you expecting to raise?
We hope to raise a total of 30.
Okay.
And then about half of that goes to the, to expenses to
Okay.
set up the race.
And so the net profit, again, and you probably already addressed this, where does it go?
It goes to the teams, and it pays for travel needs. They do it, I meet in Florida, they do it in New York, North Carolina, and also regional and national meets. And it pays for coaching clinics and equipment. And going forward, DCIA isn't going to be paying all the coaching expenses. So we're going to try to raise as much as we can so that we can sort of subsidize.
And this is just for the track and cross-country teams, or?
It's 6 teams, and it sometimes accounts for as many as 10%, as high as 10% of the school population. Depending on the year, it's a little bit lower this year, but it's a lot of kids. Some of them go off to college who might not have otherwise gone to college. They go on full scholarships, so it's been a great program. We're happy to support it.
Great, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we are voting on this
Next
in
time.
April, next month, correct?
Yes, we'll vote
Yes.
on all of the grants in April.
Great, thanks again, appreciate that. So I don't think her attendance will be necessary in April,
No.
most likely, and we'll
No.
just, our
We'll give you a
practice
call.
is to deliberate and vote in April, but,
Yeah, I'll give you a call.
and Mr. Hannigan will get a call as well. Thank you.
So we are now moving on to the next grant application from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club.
Thank you, Alex. Yep.
So hello again, my name is Alex Sanders. I am also the district manager for the DC Metro District of the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. We maintain most of the unpaved trails in Rock Creek Park. We're a volunteer organization, and among them are the soapstone, in this case the Melvin Hazen Trail. And so, apropos to some of the other conversations we've had tonight, the bridge or boardwalk, or at this point it's more of a boardwalk, and that is at the east end of the west half of the Melvin Hazen Trail near Connecticut Avenue, is no longer really serving as a bridge anymore because of the sedimentation that's happened, because of all the flooding that's happened. And over the last couple of years, and last year was particularly bad, the flooding overtook the entire structure and it became impassable for days at a time. And so it is time for that bridge to be removed and for it to be replaced with a longer, higher one to allow access more frequently. We've also noticed that the trail to the west of it is starting to erode, and so we would like to install some cribbing and reinforce that trail as well, along with the other repairs that we'll be doing in the area. So we're requesting $2,500 for purchase of supplies, lumber, timber locks, rebar, and to be used in combination with the materials that the Park Service will also be donating to this. And we intend on, starting in May, on taking down the current bridge and then building a new one over the course of June.
What's your assessment of that flood zone, if you will, in terms of where you see it going in the future? What are you building the boardwalk to accommodate? You know, how high do you think this thing's going to get? Is it more that is it an issue of the water continuing to rise, or the water continuing to just basically flood and travel west and just rip up the whole tributary there?
Well, I think the western half of Melvin Hazen, that tributary is pretty beat up. And there's a huge amount of storm water going down. It pools at that end because of the blocked culvert. Like with the Park Service, I am fully agree with that culvert remaining blocked. I think that has saved the eastern half of Melvin Hazen from the same fate that the western half of Melvin Hazen and nearly all of the other tributaries in the Rock Creek Park have suffered, which is extreme stormwater erosion and the ecological damage and everything else that comes with that. It's just been luck that that culvert has been largely blocked and that the water goes through it and comes out the other side at a much more even pace. So we don't see the amount of flooding that we do on either side. So as long as the amount of water remains a constant, and until the stormwater problem is dealt with, it will be. By cleaning out the culvert, you would remove some of the pooling. The flooding will remain. The pooling will stop, but then you'll just flood out the other side. So at this point, we're more interested in access and making sure that the trail remains as open as possible. Is it going to be open 365 days of the year? We get storms and the amount of rain we got last year? No, I think that's unrealistic. But it will be open more frequently. We intend to raise it several feet. We'll have to lengthen it as well. So, this is in trail work, nothing is a permanent solution, but we hope that this will be one that will last for many years and that will keep that part of the trail accessible for people for more days of the year than it is now.
Let me be a little provocative and play devil's advocate. If that whole western section is at risk, there's lots of trees falling, there's lots of trail degradation, lots of the trails causing erosion into the creek bed from the boardwalk to Reno Road. If you're, again, I'm not taking a position on public access to this area, but if you're building that boardwalk, you're inviting more use to a trail that's in pretty bad shape, and that may or may not be causing more erosion.
I think there might be some impact to it, but I think that it's pretty minor. That trail is not heavily used in the same way that some of the other trails in Rock Creek Park are. We haven't seen the usual signs of overuse in that trail. Most of the signs of damage that we see is from erosion, and that's largely due to stormwater runoff. We're not seeing the social trails popping up everywhere unless they're areas that are really muddy. We're not seeing a lot of signs of overuse there. I think it tends to be a bit of a hidden gem. I think most of the people who use it because they live in that immediate area and they know about it. It is kind of tucked away a little bit. I mean, you can't even see it from Connecticut Avenue. I think maybe if it was more visible from Connecticut Avenue, like the east side, you'd probably get a lot more use. But I don't see a lot of signs of overuse back there. I think it's more of an issue of just increasingly can't access that part of it because of the amount of flooding that's taking place back there. And the fact that the level of the ground has gone up significantly over the last few years. It is now almost even with the bottom of that bridge. And the last year we had several days where come down there after major rainstorms and there would be very large pieces of wooden debris sitting on that bridge that had clearly floated in and that were very difficult to get off because it is pretty much at ground level right now. So it is no longer serving its purpose.
How much is the Park Service putting in on this?
I would guess from materials, probably somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500, and then staff time as well.
Alex, I'm kind of hypersensitive on the issue of permits and, inspections and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Who's overseeing like how it gets built? Make sure it's safe.
We build it with the Park Service staff.
Okay, so they have somebody there who kind of makes sure that it's not too long and
yeah,
too high.
It's a simple bridge. We've built bridges in the past.
Okay.
We work in very close concert with Park Service staff. They vet all the stuff, and we've done this stuff a lot in the past too. So we have a very good working relationship with them. We have a agreement to maintain all of these trails, a formal agreement with them.
Cool.
We're in good shape in that regard. Thank you for the question.
All right.
Any other questions? We'll go quickly to the audience.
I just want to say that Alex and his volunteers do excellent work, the best work I've seen
into my
one thing to
patios.
connect you to, does the daylighting at Broad Branch fall into your agreement? Because that's not in the National Park Service, even though it's a tributary or straight into Broad Branch.
Yeah, so that area is mix of ownership.
Yeah.
A good portion of it is DC's. And so, pardon? And Peruvian, yeah. So that makes, it was very complicated for DOEE to make that happen. And I think that may be one of the complicating factors to its maintenance as well as this mix of ownership pattern. We have an informal agreement with the Park Service to maintain certain trails. We've certainly discussed with them in the past expanding that when they want us to do so. We do not have an agreement with the district's government to do that. And while I personally would be opposed to it, I honestly don't see that changing anytime soon. It's
going to be my next question, whether you would be open to it, and I understand the
I
other.
don't make those decisions, and it would be a complicated thing to, and it would be complicated just to persuade other staff in the club to go down the road of a very long and complicated agreement for a trail that's not even a half a mile long. That would be a lot of administrative work for very little trail. So I think that would be a hard argument to make.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
But we have actually done some work back there. And we, in the past, you know, we went back there, we actually cleared some of the invasive trees in the past when some of that work was being done, and we actually did clear some of the trails maybe a couple of years ago. So on a regular basis, we're going to go back there and chip in, but we're not in a position to be able to maintain that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I just wanted to echo Marlene. Thank you for highlighting Alex's amazing work in the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club as well, and also a shout out to Forest Hills Connection for running a lot of articles about local trail conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you all for your support, and really it's the volunteers who actually are out there maintaining the trails who deserve all the work. They're the ones putting the sweat and sometimes even blood into it. Thank you.
Thanks.
So next up, I don't know if we have a representative from the Rock
Gene.
Creek Conservancy. Great, thank you.
And speaking of Melvin Hazen,
I was going to say, it's a Melvin Hazen night.
it is a Melvin Hazen night.
All right, hi, I'm Jeannie Braha from the Rock Creek Conservancy. Thanks for having me, and thanks to our fellow partners at Melvin Hazen and beyond and Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, as well as all of you. One of the things that Rock Creek Conservancy does as the formal philanthropic partner to the entirety of Rock Creek Park, as well as the protector of the Rock Creek watershed, is engage local community groups and individual citizens in helping to restore Rock Creek as a natural oasis. So this year we've selected as one of our, in partnership with the National Park Service, as one of our demonstration sites, Melvin Hazen, because it's a hot topic in the neighborhood and because it's a great site that has a lot of really interested neighbors and some interesting challenges with invasive plants and stormwater, as we've heard lots about this evening, so I won't belabor that point. This year and beyond, we will be restoring about a 2-acre site on the, disoriented now that I'm standing this direction, the northern side of the western part of the Melvin Hazen section of the park. So sort of behind that giant stand of bamboo that's behind the community garden along Cedric Street off of Connecticut. We'll be working with community volunteers, our Rock Creek Conservation Corps, which brings high school students into the park in the summer through paid employment, and a number of really interested individuals to remove a lot of that bamboo, stabilize the slope so that it stays where it's supposed to, and we're looking for help from the ANC with some of the plants that we want to put into that site so that we can reestablish a native plant community that will really allow that section of the park, particularly with some of the stormwater solutions that are happening outside of the park, to thrive, and also create a demonstration of what we can do in other parts of that segment of Melvin Hazen and throughout the park as a whole. So that's the request in a nutshell, and it will pair very nicely with the activation that's happening on the other side of the water.
Can you give us a scope of the project in terms of how many square feet are being addressed, how many plantings are you generally do, how much money is being spent in total?
Sure, so the site is about 2 acres, and it's too late in the day for me to tell you how many square feet that is.
Let's go acres.
There's a great schematic and map on our website that I'd be happy to send you a link to, and I think it's in our grant application as well. And I'm happy to share that more widely. We will be doing at least one volunteer event each month, which will include, initially we'll be doing invasive plant removal, as well as on April 13th, you're all invited to the extreme cleanup. That will be one of our 70+ sites throughout the watershed. Cleanups, and then as we get the invasive plants removed, we'll start adding the native plants, so late spring, early summer, and then depending on the weather, we may push some of those into the fall. We expect several hundred plants to go into that slope, and because it is rather eroded, more than in some other sites where we work, we will probably put some silt fencing or something similar to shore up the slope while we're waiting for those new plants to see.
Would that silt fencing be near the creek or further up?
It will not be in the floodplain because archaeological surveys haven't happened there yet. But we need to get a little bit more of the planting out before the park natural resource staff can come in and look and give us specific guidance.
Right, right. Do you have any overall impressions of this stormwater issue, even though we've been talking about it a lot? Or is there somebody from the Rock Creek Conservancy that you would encourage us to invite to a meeting on this?
Well, hopefully by the time you have your next meeting, I will have a new senior program manager who will be happy to talk about restoration efforts in detail. In the meantime, I'm probably your best bet.
Okay.
I will say I think the stormwater issues throughout the park are pretty severe. I think the stormwater we see coming down Springland Lane in particular is more pronounced than in other parts of the park. I think some of the efforts we saw tonight will go quite a bit of ways towards mitigating some of those impacts. However, a lot of the land area that drains to Melvin Hazen is still in private hands, and I think there are a lot of opportunities that individual residents can do as well as the district efforts on their properties to hold stormwater on site so that we reduce the impact as well. And we'd be happy. One of the fun things about coming to volunteer with us is then you can take some of those ideas back home. Yes, ma'am.
So the plantings are gonna, with ANC funding, the plantings would go in. What about some kind of a longer term maintenance
Sure.
question about those plantings once they're in?
We are partners for life with the National Park Service. We bring several thousand volunteers a year into the national park, and this year we're focusing on 5 of these. We're calling them mini oases. So we expect to have several hundred, if not 1,000 volunteers throughout the year at the Melvin Hazen site. Many of whom will come from the immediate area, so we'll have a long-term connection. We're partners to the restoration at Broad Branch and Linnaean Street, which I think is a great example of how you can make a little pocket of natural oasis, and it's a beautiful effort. We are building on that experience, so thinking about how we can engage the ANC, the Civic Association, and some of the leaders in the community to really take ownership and volunteer with us over the long term. So we'll have a weed warrior who's trained to do the invasive plant management over time, as well as staff. We are investing significant staff time this year and in the next couple of years to make sure those plants take root.
Yeah, I asked this question in part because we ended up funding somebody to help do the plant maintenance in that other spot. And I'm just thinking that, hoping you guys aren't counting on coming back to us for that.
We don't plan to come back to you guys for any more interns.
Okay,
yeah,
that's all.
For sure.
And are you guys talking to each other? Just.
We do.
Okay.
Just welcome back.
Thanks, Jean.
Thanks for your time. Thanks
My pleasure.
Thanks for your patience tonight. So, switching gears dramatically, I want to introduce Mr. Brian Doyle, who's here with Ward 3 EdNet. Brian, if you don't mind coming up, we are going to discuss the resolution regarding the community working group on school overcrowding report. We're basically looking to hear what that report did. Again, I know Ms. Ruth Wattenberg from the Ward 3.
Our state school representative.
Right, thank you. Anyway, and we're looking to just opine on the study and to pass a resolution also to seek that Hardy schools stay within the system.
So hi, I'm Brian Doyle. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Ward 3 Wilson Feeder Education Network. So it's a group of folks who are involved in PTAs and local school advisory teams and other interested community members in schools in the Wilson High School feeder network. As many of you may know, almost all of the schools in the Wilson feeder network are either at or above, in some cases well above their school building capacities. Projections of enrollment out into the future have about a 25% increase on average in enrollment across these schools, as was shown in the city's most recent master facilities plan. And to translate that into hard numbers, that's almost 2,500 children. DCPS around 2 years ago convened what it called the Community Working Group on Overcrowding. So that's both DCPS, representatives from the Deputy Mayor's for Education's office, and representatives from each of the schools in the Wilson feeder pattern to think about what possible solutions would be. We kicked around ideas for the past 2 years and drafted a report. And one of the main conclusions of that report, quite simply, is, I'm even going to read it here, is while it was clear that one strategy alone would not address the current or future overcapacity challenge facing schools in the Wilson High School feeder pattern, the option the group felt would most effectively and equitably address overcrowding long-term was additional capacity in square footage. In other words, we need to build some schools. With 2,500 kids, we need to build multiple schools. So what this resolution does is point out the problem and ask the city, DCPS, the DME, and the mayor to engage on trying to now take a report that this community working group issued and try to translate it into concrete steps. It's not just about building schools. We did talk about lots of other creative solutions that we could try and address, but it is one of the major parts. And to that end, as David mentioned, the only property that DCPS owns that's not currently a public school is the old Hardy building. So this is a building in Foxhall, currently leased by the lab school. And we, at least at this point in time, would like the city to not dispose of that building and sign a long-term lease, to at least consider that as a possibility for a piece of the solution to the overcrowding problem.
Terrific, Brian.
When does the lease with the lab school expire?
I believe it expires in 2023.
Okay, so this is something that wouldn't happen before then.
However, the mayor has asked the council chair to introduce emergency legislation that originally was supposed to be debated today, but I think now it earliest could be the 2nd of April, that would circumvent the regular order of the council and DCPS and extend the lease directly. So that would happen potentially as soon as April 2nd.
I'm sorry,
So right now, the lease...
Extend the lab school's lease?
Yes.
So that DCPS couldn't use it for a school?
That is correct.
Why is
so
that
what's
good?
the background on that?
So I'm not the best person to ask, but so this is a number of times in the time that the lab school has held this lease. Instead of the regular order, which would DCPS would have to make a determination that it no longer needs the school and declare it surplus, and then send it out. Actually, the legislation then says that then charter schools would then have an opportunity to make use of that property, and if they could, then DCPS could declare it fully, or the city could declare it fully surplus for further uses. A number of times the council has introduced emergency legislation to go around that process and directly declare it surplus and extend the lease. That happened last in 2016. There was a move, I'm not going to the exact dates, but a number of times it's happened. The community is, let's say, spoken up strongly, and that lease has not been extended. And again, emergency legislation is now before the council to do it again.
So, Rich, can you weigh in on this, or are you familiar with, or Jonathan? Yeah.
So the lease was inherited by the lab school
ago. The council there was legislation to extend the lease to the lab school for much longer. I can't remember, it's about 20 years ago, off the top of my head. That was introduced last session. Councilmember Shea, knowing that this process was going on and being active in this process, did not want the lab's current space at the party to vanish without there being a plan in place from DCPS. She said to the mayor, I want to have a plan, and then she is fully supportive of what the lab school is doing, of the students there. She didn't want to lose what was the last lease space without some plan being in place. The session ended in December. Just a week or two ago, as Brian said, new legislation was introduced that includes emergency legislation. What emergency legislation means is that the bill not only moves much more quickly, it just needs one vote. It also means that it skips over the entire hearing process. If it had been taken up today, it would be law for 30 days. The problem is emergencies usually make sense in the idea that you have a law for 30 days and then we can act to finalize it. But when it comes to a contract or a lease or anything like that, you sign the contract. So emergency basically is passing the law. Sometimes we don't even pass permanent legislation afterwards because in theory the contract's already agreed to. There's no reason to go back and do something more. They did not bring it up. Part of that was a request from the council member. She sent a letter to all of her colleagues asking them not to. I'm happy to share that letter with you all, which lays out all her reasons for.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'm happy to send it along.
So which member is in support of this legislation?
Yeah, who
The
introduced it?
emergency legislation to
I
extend?
believe any of the members are in support, having spoken to many of their offices of the emergency legislation.
So
Well, who
is it your,
introduced it?
Can we, let's slow that, can we slow this down a little bit? Why don't we have Leah ask the question she would like to ask, and then we'll just go through the commissioners.
well, I would just assume that if the mayor, is it the mayor introduced the legislation? In which case, then she would have done so with the idea that there is one member who would support the legislation. I don't want to assume anything, but if you're a legislator, I think that's sort of the route you would take.
I'll be honest, generally, and I don't need to, you can weigh in as well. Generally, when it comes to issues related to a ward, the council at large, everybody may have opinions, but they will, and this is say micro level, but this is very fairly a ward-specific issue. We'll defer to the board member. I do know that Chairman Mendelson was at a meeting of the Ward 3 network saying that he wasn't in opposition to the permanent legislation. I haven't spoken to every office. Obviously, council members may not be telling our office that they are in support of the emergency legislation because they know that my boss is very strongly opposed. By and large, we have rules around emergency legislation that, probably not surprisingly, has to be an emergency. And the lease that is expiring in 2023, I think procedurally a lot of people have recognized this doesn't necessarily fit what an emergency is supposed to be. There could be people, there could be council members.
I just have one last, okay, so I just have one last question, which is, how can a resolution passed by this body here, impact in a meaningful way, the efforts of the community and your group to keep Hardy on the radar as a school for these extra students?
Sure. I mean, it would make clear that the community in this area, so outside of Foxhalls, where this would be of a different immediate concern, but that this community is supportive of looking closely at using the old Hardy School as a DCPS school. At least having a hearing on it and not moving forward with an emergency would mean that this community, all Ward 3 ANCs, all Ward 3 residents, all district residents would have a chance to talk about how the old Hardy should be used, talk about if it's best used as a lab school, if it's best used as something by DCPS. I know that people across the city have different opinions. I think it would be
Let me, Brian, go ahead, and then I'm gonna ask Rich if he'd like to offer anything.
The only thing additional I would add is the resolution isn't just about Old Hardy. It's about the broader problem of
Right.
overcrowding.
I get it.
And getting support not just from within school communities, but from without, I think is an important step in signaling that this is an important issue we need to keep working on.
Excuse me, we're gonna come to you, we got point of order here. So, Mr. Harrington, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank Councilman Shaver for being here and being able to answer that. I do want to say that this is very much on the mayor's radar. She's heard from all levels. I mean, we just got back from a community walk in Palisades where she really had to step up a lot and promise but I do want to say that what she said on the walk was she really focused on $20 million going into key, $20 million going into the starter, how much money the city is spending to pull out those schools that are party, but have to go back and further on those things.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah, I
that.
say to that point, we need to make a tip of that. I know that the conversation was said about key and starter, those are very important investments. My boss would respond by saying those are replacements to existing trailers, so we're not actually adding seat space anymore than we're right now, we're just making permanent trailer space. So it is important to talk about what we're gonna do also to increase space and the number of seats.
Got it.
Well, and I will mention that Brian's been CCing me in some of the emails that Ned is sending to the council, and especially on this emergency legislation issue, and getting to Commissioner Leah's point that I would see this resolution coupled with the commissioners that are authorized to speak about it, which currently are myself and Commissioner Kubler. If we want to add different people, we can talk about that. But I would imagine immediately sending this to the council and the mayor's office and wherever else my good friend Brian Doyle recommends. But I think that we would actually have to modify this resolution a little bit to address this particular emergency concept, and whether this thing gets picked up on April 2nd, that we would strongly urge that not happen, and that we go through the normal legislative course of business, ordinary course of business, to consider it along with all the other more broader educational issues in Ward 3. So I don't know, I think Carolyn or Andrea, I don't know if you have other questions, but I would like to sort of drill down on potentially adding an extra clause here.
I have some comments on the resolution when we get, let's finish the discussion and then we'll go.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
my question was specifically on what the language of the resolution is, and whether, so 3E and 3D.
Sorry.
3E and 3D both have resolutions on this issue in the last week. Is it identical, or is any changes?
I'm not aware, but Brian, go ahead.
I can say that the 3E and the 3F resolutions are, at this point in time, identical. It may, perhaps, unless David and Jonathan have tweaked, perhaps the language.
I had, last time when Ms. Wattenberg was here, I had asked that we take a little bit of a pause on the Hardy School issue, just so I could catch up and understand. But no, my understanding is that this has not changed since last time, and it should be functionally equivalent to the other commissions.
Yeah, I mean, 3E in particular took a very sort of strident stand against the moving it forward, and potentially even a release.
Can you speak up a little bit? Sorry.
I was just saying, some of the commissioners there seemed, certainly they were opposed to the emergency legislation, and they actually seemed opposed to extending the lease potentially at all, but that's sort of.
I'm sorry, would you identify yourself?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I'm Ryan Keith, I'm a 3F resident, 3F05, so yeah,
Thank you.
Great, welcome.
And so to your other question, I think 3D actually wrote a couple of letters that were much more focused on the old Hardy building, as opposed to overcrowding. I mean, they had some element of overcrowding as well, but given that the nature of where the building is.
yeah, where it is.
So I will mention that there are 4 operative clauses in the resolution, and the one specifically on the Hardy School states that ANC's, be it further resolved that ANC3F supports the return of the old Hardy School to use as a DCPS school when its current lease with the lab school ends, and recommends to the DC Council and the Mayor of DC that no action be taken to dispose or otherwise encumber the old Hardy School. So that goes pretty far in endorsing the idea, at least, that this should revert to DCPS. The question, I guess, for us is, do we want to add an additional sentence there? I mean, by definition, this means that the emergency legislation shouldn't take place, but if we want to highlight that, we probably could
Was there
there.
no language in there that highlights that?
Yeah, I'd like to.
No, she just read it, sorry.
So I actually spent some time reading the report today. As you said, there are a number of recommendations, short, medium, and long term. And I found it that in the presentations and even as these resolutions, I understand about the emergency, but this issue of the Hardy School seems to be growing and taking dominance. And I would actually like to offer a different language, which is along the lines of that we urge DCPS and the Mayor's office to seriously consider the recommendations of the community working group and come to speak to us about the solutions they are proposing and why, rather than picking out a couple of the solutions of the, 2 or 3 of the many that are in there and giving
Right.
direction
So
to
what's your reaction? What's your reaction? So the first, let me just quickly summarize these. The first one is that ANC3F endorses the recommendations outlined in the report, especially the need for new schools to open. So haven't yet asked them to, engage and study and then come back. So here's the next one. ANC3F supports DCPS and the Deputy Mayor of Education engaging with the school communities affected to begin taking concrete steps to implement the recommendations. And you're actually right, Naomi, that we had talked about them describing those steps and coming back to us, so that might be the place to insert that. And then the third one was what we'd already talked about with regard to Hardy School and whether we add the emergency piece to that or not. And then finally, that myself and Commissioner Kugler are authorized to speak, and we can amend that as folks.
So I would amend the third to speak against doing anything as an emergency legislation, but I would like to not include that we support the return of the Hardy School. I don't know, I can't say I know enough about that to say that is the solution now. We've just asked them to look at a number of solutions.
We can talk about that, as we did talk about it last time, and I am actually in support of returning it to DCPS. We should probably discuss that. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion or has a preference for what we'd like to do.
Well, I spoke up the last time, so I think it would be very imprudent and short-sighted for us to not endorse returning it to DCPS. If that's the only piece of surplus property that's on the books right now, which it sounds like it is, there's nothing else available, to sign a lease that could be a fairly long-term encumbrance on the ability to return that to the surplus, to the usable square footage would be, I think, a real mistake. And you're right, I don't know, maybe Jonathan was you in one of your rebuttals, if you will, who said that, what's being done right now under the current plans are just to address the current problems. But it takes so long to develop a new school. It takes 2 years. By that time, we're going to have the same problem, and it'll probably be worse.
Anyone else have just on this friendly amendment suggestion, any other reactions, Leah?
No, I mean, I support us clearly identifying Hardy as real estate space, or as you call it, surplus property, sort of within the larger context of these improvements and suggestions, especially when there's emergency legislation pending on this particular issue. On the lease itself, I think there is a sense of urgency specifically related to Hardy that I think we need to address.
And is there language, just to clarify this, is there language in the current resolutions or current clauses that says that they don't like that doing this emergency resolution kind of cuts off our ability to be able to have a more extended conversation about the merits of using the Hardy School somewhere down the pike as a possible, one of the possible solutions. Because I think you're right. I don't think that that's going to be enough from what we're hearing.
Commissioner Malone, what's your reaction?
So I'm wondering if Naomi, if your objection is in explicitly saying that DCPS should keep the Hardy schools.
Not that I'm necessarily opposed to that, I just read a report that had 15, 20 proposals, short, medium, and long term.
Okay.
And I'm just not quite sure, other than I understand that to do emergency legislation, locking them in 4 weeks. What I would like to see is a careful consideration of those range of solutions,
Yeah, I agree with that.
and then selected and made. And one of that may be selecting the Hardy School, but I don't quite understand why we would call out that one solution in our resolution.
So would it be possible to, instead of calling out that one resolution, talk about the recommendations and the proposals, and then explicitly, in order not to remove the Hardy School from the list of options against that emergency legislation?
Yeah,
Could we do something like that?
Well, let me.
Would you guys be okay with
No,
that,
I would not
Leah,
be.
Carolyn?
I would
You
not.
would not.
So I think that the second clause here, and we can expand upon it in terms of, that the second clause says that ANC3F supports DCPS and the deputy mayor engaging with the school communities affected, begin taking concrete steps to implement the recommendations of the report as soon as feasible. That's where we, in my opinion, where we could add on that DCPS and the deputy mayor engage with the community and report to the ANCs with what they're doing, what this process is really going to look like to evaluate the recommendations from the working group. Then the question is, and respectfully to Commissioner Rutenberg, is whether as part of that evaluation and getting back to the commissions, what are you going to do about Hardy School? That's what that would be, I think, the gist of what Commissioner Rutenberg is suggesting, is that as part of that evaluation and getting back, tell us what you want to do with the Hardy School, and oh, by the way, please don't do this emergency solution. If that's what we're suggesting, I don't support that, because what I actually feel is the bandwidth and the capability and the messaging on this is, in my preference, is that we support the Hardy School reverting to DCPS.
I think where the disconnect might be is that Hardy School sounds like a no-brainer, as you were saying. You know, like, we can't give up what is already our only piece of existing property. But it is in the context of other possible solutions. Short,
Can
long.
I speak for a constituent that's not here, as parents of children who go to the lab school,
Uh-huh.
who do not have other alternatives in the DCPS or good alternatives in the DACPS system? And they're also our
Well, we did notice this last
constituents.
time and this time.
Yeah. And I don't know if anyone's heard from them or how they feel about this.
Well, what are
And
they
I-
using the Hardy property for?
The school. There's
No,
a
no,
school.
I know, but like, we go to the lab school for basketball every weekend, and I see there's still trailers and they're like doing work, so what is the school actually using the Hardy property for?
I don't.
So I cannot be an authoritative voice on this. My understanding is they are indeed, they have they have another main campus. This is a satellite campus. My understanding is they have somewhere on the order of 70 students there right now. I've heard playing, again, I'm not going to, about 12 of those students are residents of the District of Columbia. So, lab school's doing good work. One cannot claim otherwise, and, they're making use of the school.
Can I just say, the lab school has spoken to us, I mean, for them to better understand their use of the space. The reason they're looking now, obviously, the lease is not until 2023. The reason they're looking now is because they need head time if the lease doesn't get renewed to find new space. So it isn't to say, we don't renew the lease and the 75th are sure they don't know where to go. It doesn't mean the lab school can find additional space, and it would certainly
not that
It's
far
on
away.
Palisades.
They were set for Palisades.
Is it Palisades?
So Naomi, Commissioner Rivers, if that wasn't an issue, the lab school not being here to really like have a voice in this whole like discussion, would you support what the chairman is proposing, or would you still have a problem with the language as it stands?
Well, it's hard to do the hypothetical. Clearly, if there's an empty building, that would be a different conversation. I guess the other, I just feel like we don't have enough information. I don't know what condition the school is, what kind of renovation or costs it would take. They have a lease to 23. Is there need to be work on it? Is this an option that's going to kick in? And you know, Carolyn, you've been worried about doing something soon, but is this an option that's going to kick in 25? It could be perfectly fine. I just don't feel like I have enough information to give my recommendation to DCPS or the mayor or the council that they should do X or Y when there's a report of people who spent multiple months studying this and have listed. I know you're recommending this as one of your recommendations, but there's a number of recommendations in there. And your report doesn't call this out in any huge way. I went and looked through there. It's
But
just in there with the.
I actually read, this is the report you submitted for last month's meeting, right? Is that the report that you're referring to?
I read the one that's on your website.
Yeah, so I read that too, and last month, the super,
Ruth Wattenberg.
Ruth Wattenberg, and she actually, I don't know if you guys remember, but she did identify Hardy as one of the most tangible ways in which we can help resolve or alleviate some of this overcrowding issue.
And I don't think that was to the exclusion of the other considerations and recommendations, but it's a
And
strong
it was not, there
piece
was no
of-
emergency legislation pending. I mean, but the sense of urgency around really capturing that physical space as part of the suggestions it was a big presentation by her. I felt like a big emphasis by her on that. And that really resonated with me, especially within the context of having read that report.
So let me be a lawyer for a second. And let me now.
And we can have a night where we all don't agree. This would be radical
No,
for
this
us,
is good. This is good. So I'm now looking at the, for those that have the.
For the people who are still here, this will be my first time in the council where we have that vote unanimously on something.
We do
but
have
we
money
may
for
get.
boxing gloves, but, so the third phrase, and this is a healthy discussion, thank you. Be it further resolved that ANC3F supports, and now I'm gonna add something, supports the serious consideration of the return of the Hardy School to use it as a DCPS school, blah, 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 when the lease with, so it's a serious consideration of.
Yep.
And then recommends to the DC Council and the Mayor of the District of Columbia that no emergency legislative action be taken to dispose or otherwise encumber the old Hardy School.
Yep, that works.
Anybody have questions about those two modifications?
No, I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. I just have one small comment, which is, will we have an opportunity then, let's say, best case scenario, the emergency legislation is dropped, doesn't go anywhere. Will we have the opportunity, will there be due diligence, will there be a public forum for us to actually engage in the conversation around the Hardy School?
Yeah,
And can that
You
be?
had a suggestion for adding
I second that question.
the,
So,
well, we could add, like, you had a suggestion a few minutes ago of adding language to the resolution about asking the.
well, right, so the second clause reads, be it further resolved that ANC3F supports DCPS-VME engaging with the school, communities affected to begin concrete steps, and that DCPS and the deputy mayor communicate back to interested commissions their process in evaluating the community working group's report. Something like that. And,
Yeah, I think that works.
okay, somebody have that? Andrew, did you get sort of? Commissioner Malone?
Yes, I'm reading.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And then we have a couple of commissioners that are authorized to speak. I don't know, if this comes up in the normal legislative, later in April or May or whenever, just as if it doesn't come up as an emergency, this may not come up again for a while. Or what do you see? Who knows?
I can't say.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the council reviewed out these things, so he will have to decide what the period is.
Okay. Ryan, I know you hopefully have gotten used to listening to me ramble. Are you comfortable with where we are? Okay. Any other observations, questions?
Yeah, I had a stupid little thing for one of the whereas clauses.
By the way, I'm going to add an N to Wilson in the title.
I
Okay,
sent you
that's
a
good.
few other typos
Okay.
cleaned up.
Okay. In the whereas clauses, we quote the report in terms of statistics and numbers and things like that. And I'm just wondering if we should just say, according to the CW, the Community Working Group report,
Right.
the numbers are this, that, and the other.
Actually, I have what I hope is a friendly amendment, which is, I was actually, and I sent David an email earlier today, of the fourth whereas, instead of quoting the report, that you quote the master facility.
So that's according to a variety of projections?
Yeah, according to a variety of projections, overcrowding will get much worse in coming years. According to the 2018 master facilities plan, predicting an increase in nearly
But
25
doesn't it,
students.
I think we say somewhere later, according to the working group, and then later, the master facilities plan agrees with that. I think that there's wording in there. So you just want to
It's a
say
sixth
according,
paragraph, that word.
you just want to say according to the master facilities plan,
The other nice thing
and not
is that
say
the
later,
master facilities plan
okay.
is more recent, so it's actually, their projections run 2018 to 2028 as opposed to 2015 to 2020, which were like almost halfway through.
So I think we'll go ahead with the 2018 Master Facilities Plan. Is there anywhere that we do want to reference the Community Working Group study?
Yeah, in the first one.
Okay. According to the,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
So this reference on the clause, it says, that references currently the working group on overcrowding and the 2018 master facilities plan moves up two clauses. And is cited there, correct?
In the very first clause.
Oh, the very first clause, okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm able to summarize the changes
You want me to summarize them?
succinctly, and then we will vote.
Okay, so I'll start at the top. Clause, whereas clause 1, we're going to add according to the community working group. Whereas clause 4, we're going to change the reference to the community working group there to the master plan, and then take away the statement that the master plan agrees later. Okay? Active clause 1, we're going to amend it to say that we want serious consideration of DCPS keeping the Hardy School, and also add in there that they should not pass emergency legislation. Active clause 2, we want to amend it to add and say that we also want them to outline an engagement process with the community about all of this. Those are the changes.
Yeah, so the serious consideration and no emergency legislation, that I have that as the third clause.
Yeah, I do too.
You want that in clause 3?
That is clause 3.
Yeah, it talks about the lab school.
Okay.
And then as you said, getting back to the ANC is the second clause. Okay. Are the commissioners adequately informed of these changes?
Yes.
Yes.
How do I communicate typos to you? How do I communicate typos to you? I sent you a version earlier.
Okay,
Look at
did
the
you do a
small-
red line?
I
Yeah,
saw it.
you can look at the small changes, yeah.
Okay. So am I doing this?
Are you making the changes and sending it to me?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Are we comfortable with Commissioner Kubler and myself speaking on this, or is anyone else, lady, you want to be included? Are you comfortable?
No, you're,
Yeah, the only thing is that if there is a hearing, and we have to speak, and you can't do it, I might not be able to do it either. That's the only problem.
Okay.
Well,
Because
then
of a
do you want me to be a
conflict or?
substitute?
Because I'm going back to work.
Okay. Why don't we just, would you mind being added in as
I'm
a?
happy to be an understudy.
Sure. Okay. Terrific. So we will add, the three of us will be authorized to speak on this.
Okay.
This is fantastic. Thank you, Commissioner Rudenberg, and more importantly, thank you,
Are
Mr.
you going to make a
Doyle. And
motion
I
to
wanted to have
adopt
a
the resolution as amended?
disagreement.
We are going to make a motion. Somebody?
I move to adopt the resolution as amended.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
5, 5-0. Anyone opposed, abstaining? No, 5-0. Again, thank you, Brian, appreciate it. And thank you to the mayor's office and Councilmember Che. This is democracy works. Thank you.
Brian, can
I think we should adjourn on that. Let's go.
Are we done with our agenda?
I move that we approve the February minutes.
I second that.
All those in favor of approving?
Aye.
There we go, 5-0 on the February minutes.
Do we have a treasurer report?
No. But our only expenses have been our administrative support and our $25 bond payment to the district.
Actually,
do we have to vote on the settlement agreement?
that was part of the consent,
Consent,
so
right,
that we
okay.
don't have to vote. I do want to come back to, maybe I missed this, and I apologize. I'm looking at, as part of the other business, I have a few minutes to address this.
We do.
The equity imperative project that President Mason is undertaking here, and I think that there is a sense of the community, a sense, not the, but a sense of the community that we try to support the district, UDC a little bit more, not just on the 4250 property, but its other operating budget requests and potentially even their facilities budget requests. I'm not prepared to really talk about it too much. I don't know if there's anyone, Ms. Gray, if you'd like to talk about it real quickly. I'm wondering potentially if we can even, not yet proposing, but we have a paragraph resolution that generally supports this. It may be premature to do, but we are in the budget cycle.
David, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the connection between the equity imperative and a request that we support requests for more funding from UDC.
Well, let's hear about that.
What's the connection? Is there a connection between those two things?
Well, they're the same thing. So the equity imperative, or the resolution that was sent out, was a request to just support the university in terms of the funding that we're needing. So it's similar to what you all did last year. There's really nothing different except we're extending, we need those additional funds.
But what does that have to do with equity imperative?
That's the name of
That's the name of it.
the initiative.
So
do you
we're
want to
requesting.
define equity imperative again, just so it helps link it to
Yeah, I
the-
think that's,
So
No, I understand what equity imperative is. So the idea is that we're recommending more funding so that UDC can carry out their equity imperative
Correct.
plans,
And it's
not
just-
for buildings or for other things.
Correct.
Thank you. That's the piece that I didn't understand.
So
Okay.
literally it's not the same resolution from last year, but it's a continuation of the resolution that was passed last year to continue to support the university in our efforts to upgrade the campus, upgrade the facilities, and be the University of the District of Columbia and for the nation's capital. I hope I'm explaining.
I'm sorry if I missed this. Was that resolution shared with us?
It was, Lee Brian Reba sent it out.
yeah, it did, but it didn't go to everybody, because I
Okay.
checked my emails, all 4 billion accounts I have now, and I did not get his email
I don't
until
believe I saw
tonight.
it, I'm sorry.
Who said?
Well,
Yeah, and I
Lee
think
Bryan.
that, I don't know if Lee Bryan
He said to
had
send it out
forwarded
about
the
2 weeks
resolution
ago.
that we
I don't
passed
think I
last
got
year
it.
and asked us to
I
do
No,
it.
he forwarded a different copy
He
for
said
this
it-
year.
Uh,
So I
it's
can make
temp-
sure I send it out to the commissioners tomorrow.
I checked
Yeah,
it.
And then
commissioners,
maybe we could put it on April's schedule
is
for
that gonna be too
conversation.
late?
That's what I thought.
Not really, because
But I've been checking both.
What do you
Commissioners,
think?
we are going to, excuse me, and I'll come to you next to this, we're going to all locate Lee Bryan's proposed resolution. We're gonna find the resolution from last year. We're going to consider that at our April meeting. We haven't noticed it as a resolution for tonight. We nevertheless could move if we wanted to, but I think it's premature. We have a lot of education to do, no pun intended, and everybody comfortable with that?
Could
Yes.
we resend it to all
absolutely,
of the?
I'll send it to everyone.
Yeah. and
None
there-
of us got it.
Yeah, you have multiple
I got it.
emails, yeah.
You got it? I did not.
I did not either.
Yeah, he may have sent it to our
I have a
DC
lot of
Gov.
your personal emails, so is that okay if I send it to you?
Send it to, yeah, whatever you got.
Okay.
I think that's,
Okay.
he just sent it
And
to me.
our resolution is in the archives. Okay, it's in
The
our,
prior-
on the website.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, the prior one, we can pull
Yeah.
that up. Are there
Okay.
any other items under,
Yeah.
good night, Mr. Doyle?
I have one
night.
for Juanita, sorry. What is going on with taking over and maintaining the 4250 and particularly the people who continue to live in the private
The homeless situation.
space and the rodent problem and
So we currently have the building.
Yeah.
It's in our possession. We've been working with the city and with Venice Main Street. They've had a few, I think twice now, they've had the city come in and remove people from the space. Unfortunately, it's one of those situations that if they leave one day and then they come back the next day, you have to start the process all over again of removing them.
And when will you activate the building, which would help? I know you've just only recently taken on the lease, but
That I would have to get from First Oval. I'm not sure exactly when we plan on having people start.
But speaking of resolutions, that was another resolution where you supported the UCDC and the use of the building, but also including activating the ground floor in a way that was
So I think
beneficial.
we are having the community task force meeting on April 11th. If you'd like to attend that and/or create a series of questions, we can do that on that as well.
I can say the main thing with the mayor is going to support us purchasing the building, which is great, but we have the 3-year contract, so in that time period, we don't know exactly when the funding is coming. So in that time period, we really can't activate the ground space until we own it, because there's a lot of work that would have to be done and all of that good stuff. So we've started the process of looking at potential people who could go into the spaces. We've done the study with Venice Main Street when Bernstein still had the building. So there is movement, but in terms of getting someone in that space right away, that won't be happening. We would put people in 4225 before we have the space activated in 4250.
And that would be university staff in 4220.
Yes.
Any other questions on that issue or other business?
Any changes in the plans for the Walgreens building, for the old one?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, just it's swing space, right?
Right now, yes.
Can I bring up 2 small new business things? I'm sorry, Juanita.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Yes, we are still in session.
Okay, so just a reminder about settlement agreements. I think I sent an email out last week about dusting off whatever you got because people are starting to renew, as you know. And I talked to Sarah Fastbow. Everything that has been filed with them should be on their website underneath the resources page. So you can call her if you have problems locating the old ones.
Yeah, and we have the old ones, believe it or not.
We don't have all of them.
We have many of them, though.
We have many of them, but we don't have all of them for domain.
Oh,
which is
I
why-
see,
yeah,
I see,
yeah, so-
okay. I know, I was just
yeah.
thinking of those in terms of templates, but yeah.
Templates. I was looking for the records of everything that we had filed, and domain is such a weird case.
If you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you a little bit, just on some, so you have TIPAD, is that in your SMB? Did you receive that?
No.
I only got this.
I order from there all the time.
Well, that should count, so.
Before it's you, isn't it?
Yeah.
I actually
And
think
that's not a
half
conflict
that-
of interest.
No, I think half of that block is in my SMD,
Right.
in
It
all
is in your
seriousness.
Hold on,
But
guys.
oddly,
We-
the other half isn't.
So,
Yeah, I think TIPAD is you.
yeah, so this is
What's going on?
4481, TIPAD, Connecticut.
Okay.
Hold on. Any other?
So
oh,
typically
under
you'll
this?
get
Very
that stuff,
excited.
Sorry?
David. Typically you will get this stuff, not the rest of us. Typically it goes to the chair.
Ah.
And so when you
I
get
get-
them, please pass them along.
Do you get emails over the placard has gone up?
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no,
I get some emails about the placards.
Yeah, that's how
But
I
those
know.
they should be, according to what Sarah said, those should be going to the businesses, to the single-member district rep commissioner for those businesses. They
I
should
think I
be.
get them all.
In theory, well, you get them all.
Which is fine, but,
And then
Okay.
if they're not in my SMD.
Okay.
then-
Well, anyway, so that's one, that was just a reminder. And then another topic of conversation that I know has been going back and forth between some of the northern ANCs is this whole issue of the 5G small cell service
Yeah.
towers. So, okay, so that's
do
something.
we want to
that-
invite somebody in to speak to that, or what would
Yeah.
you like to do?
That would be good.
I think we probably should, because
Yeah.
it looks like there's 2 developing camps from what I gather. There's
Okay.
the
Do you want
ones
to
that
take the lead on?
I
inviting,
can,
if
yeah.
you don't mind?
All right,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Any other?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.